What if your private paradise turned into everyone's playground? Quiet millionaire Mike Tyson's prized pool became a battleground when nosy neighbors invaded. Fed up, he set clever traps, pool dye, fake warnings, and sneaky sprinklers to fight back. Will his genius tricks stop the freeloaders or ignite chaos in this sleepy town? Watch how one man's stand for respect turns into a wild showdown you won't believe. Stay hooked. This gets crazy. In the quaint, picturesque town of Meadowgrove, nestled in the heart of England, there lived a man named Mike Tyson. Yes, the Mike Tyson, the legendary heavyweight boxer who had once dominated the ring with his ferocious power and unyielding spirit. Now, at the age of 59, Mike had retired from the world of boxing and sought solace in the quiet countryside, far from the roar of the crowd and the flash of cameras. His home was his castle, a sprawling 3-story Victorian manor, complete with a meticulously maintained garden and a sparkling, Olympic-sized swimming pool that was the envy of the neighborhood. Mike had always been a private man, preferring the solace of his own company to the noise of crowded gatherings. His pool, surrounded by tall, perfectly trimmed hedges and adorned with statues of Greek gods, was his sanctuary. It was a place where he could escape the world, swim laps until his muscles burned, and find peace in the rhythmic motion of his strokes. The neighborhood of Meadowgrove was a mix of old and new, with families who had lived there for generations and those who had recently moved in, drawn by the charm of the countryside. Mike kept to himself, not seeking to be the life of the party, but merely wanting to live in peace. However, peace was not what he found. It began innocently enough. One sunny afternoon, Mike returned from a trip to the city to find his garden gate ajar. He thought little of it, attributing it to a forgetful gardener. But as he walked around to the pool, he noticed something amiss. The water level was lower than usual, and a trail of wet footprints led from the pool to the gate. His heart sank as he realized someone had been in his sanctuary. He tried to brush it off, thinking it might have been a curious child who had wandered in and quickly left. But the next day, he found a discarded towel draped over his fence and an empty soda can floating in his pool. His blood boiled, but he took a deep breath, determined to give his neighbors the benefit of the doubt. Mike asked around, hoping to find the culprit and resolve the matter quietly. But he was met with shrugs and dismissive comments. "Oh, it's probably just the kids," one neighbor, Mrs. Harper, said with a laugh. "You know how they are." Another neighbor, Mr. Thompson, barely looked up from his newspaper as he muttered, "They're just having fun, Mike." "You've got a nice pool. People notice." Mike's jaw clenched as he listened to their nonchalant responses. He tightened the lock on his gate and installed security cameras, hoping that would be enough to deter future intruders. But it wasn't. A week later, Mike was sitting in his study, going over some old boxing memorabilia, when he heard splashing and laughter coming from his backyard. He rushed to the window and saw a group of teenagers swimming in his pool, their carefree laughter echoing through the garden. He stormed outside, his face a mask of fury. "Excuse me," he bellowed, his voice booming like thunder. The teenagers froze, their eyes wide with shock. "Who are you, and what are you doing in my pool?" One of the boys, a lanky teenager with a mop of blonde hair, stammered. We didn't think you'd mind. We just wanted to cool off." Mike's eyes narrowed. "You didn't think to ask," he snapped. "This is my property, and you are trespassing. Get out, all of you." The teenagers scrambled out of the pool, grabbing their towels and bolting out the gate. Mike stood there, his heart pounding with anger and frustration. He had tried to be reasonable, to give them the benefit of the doubt, but they had taken advantage of his kindness. The next day, Mike confronted the parents of the teenagers, expecting an apology. Instead, he was met with defensiveness and excuses. "Oh, come on, Mike," the mother scoffed. "They're just kids. It's hot out, and your pool is just sitting there. What's the big deal?" Mike stared at her, stunned. "The big deal," he said slowly, his voice dripping with ice, "is that this is my property, my home, my pool, and I don't remember inviting anyone to use it." The father crossed his arms, a smirk playing on his lips. "You're being dramatic, Mike. It's just a pool." Mike's hands clenched into fists, but he bit back the words he really wanted to say. Instead, he installed more security cameras and even hired a part-time security guard to patrol his property. But the intrusions didn't stop. One scorching Saturday afternoon, Mike returned from a trip to the city to find his garden packed with people. Adults lounged in his chairs, sipping drinks and chatting as if they owned the place. Children splashed in his pool, their laughter filling the air. A folding table was set up with snacks, and empty beer bottles littered the ground. Mike stood there, his jaw tightening as he scanned the crowd. His eyes locked onto one of his neighbors, Emily, who lived 3 houses down. She waved at him, a smug smile on her face. "Hey, Mike," she called out. "Hope you don't mind. It was so hot today, we figured we'd cool off in your pool." Mike's voice came out sharp and steady. "Mind? Oh, I mind. Every single one of you get out. Now." The crowd froze, exchanging looks of disbelief. Emily scoffed. "Oh, don't be like that, Mike. It's just a pool. You weren't even home." Mike stepped forward, his anger bubbling just beneath the surface. "It's not just a pool," he growled. "It's my pool, my house, my yard. You don't live here. You don't pay for this. So get out, all of you." Someone muttered, "Geez, what's his problem?" That did it. Mike stormed to the pool equipment box, grabbed the remote, and shut off the pool filter. Then he yanked the power cord to the speakers, plunging the garden into silence. "I'm calling the police," he announced. That got them moving. Drinks were snatched, towels were wrapped up, and in a matter of minutes, his yard was emptied. Emily, however, had the audacity to roll her eyes as she walked out. "You don't have to be so uptight, Mike," she muttered. Nobody was hurting anything. Mike stood there, stone-faced, watching as they shuffled out like nothing had happened. He slammed the gate behind them, locked it, and stood there, hands on his hips, fuming. He knew one thing for sure. This wasn't over. They had zero respect for him, and if respect wasn't going to stop them, something else would. Mike sat at his kitchen table, staring at the security footage from earlier that day. The nerve of these people, the way they acted so entitled, like his property was theirs to use whenever they pleased. He wasn't just angry anymore. He was done. He had tried everything. Talking, reasoning, cameras, locks. None of it worked. So now it was time to get creative. He made a trip to the hardware store, picking up 2 heavy-duty locks, one for the side gate, one for the pool equipment box. The old ones were strong, but these were unbreakable. Next, he went online and ordered a special chemical treatment for his pool. Not chlorine, something stronger. It wasn't dangerous, just a harmless but highly effective trick used by public pools to expose rule breakers. A little something called pool dye, a harmless chemical that turns the water bright green if someone pees in it. Yep, if even one of those freeloaders tried to use his pool again, they'd leave looking like a radioactive alien. But that was just the start. Mike wanted insurance, something that would make them think twice before ever stepping foot in his yard again. So he went to a local sign shop and had a custom pool sign made. The next morning, he drilled it right onto his fence, where everyone could see. Warning: pool chemically treated for unauthorized use. Exposure may cause rash, severe itching, or temporary skin discoloration. Did it sound a little extreme? Sure. Was any of it actually true? Nope. But they didn't know that. And just to sell it, he placed an empty hazardous chemical container near the pump, something he picked up from a friend who worked in maintenance. Now all he had to do was wait, and it didn't take long. The next hot afternoon, Mike sat by his window, sipping iced tea, watching. It was quiet for most of the day, until he saw a couple of teenagers walking past his fence. They stopped, read the sign, and one of them whispered something, then pointed at the chemical container. Within seconds, they turned right back around and walked away. Mike smirked. Later that night, Emily, the same entitled neighbor from the last pool party, was walking her dog when she spotted the sign. She squinted at it, then pulled out her phone and started typing. Mike checked the neighborhood group chat a few minutes later, and there it was. A post that read, FYI, looks like Mike put some kind of weird chemical in his pool. Says it causes rashes and skin issues. Not sure how safe that is. Just a heads up. The comments rolled in. OMG, what if it leaks into the ground? That doesn't sound legal. Why does he even care so much? It's just water. Mike laughed out loud. They were mad, not because he was lying, not because they got caught, but because they realized their free ride was over. And if they wanted to test him, they were more than welcome to try. It was a Thursday evening when he heard it, sharp, impatient banging on his front door. He set down his drink and peeked through the peephole. Emily stood there, arms crossed, looking pissed. Mike sighed. Here we go. He opened the door, keeping his face calm. Yes, Emily. She didn't waste time. We need to talk, Mike. He raised an eyebrow. Do we? Emily huffed. Look, I don't know what your problem is, but people are saying you put some kind of dangerous chemicals in your pool. Mike blinked, then smirked. I did, he said smoothly, to keep out uninvited guests. Emily's jaw clenched. You can't do that. What if a kid touches the water? Mike folded his arms. A kid who broke into my yard? Emily faltered. That's not the point. It's exactly the point, Mike shot back. I told people to stay out. They didn't listen, so I took precautions. Emily scoffed. You're ridiculous. You don't even have kids. It's just sitting there going to waste. Mike tilted his head. So because I don't have kids, that means my pool is up for public use? Emily rolled her eyes. Oh, come on. Don't act like... Mike cut her off. No, you come on, Emily. You and the rest of these people have some nerve. You don't pay for my water bill. You don't clean my pool. But you expect to just help yourselves. Emily's face turned red. Well, if you weren't so unfriendly, maybe people would actually like you. Mike laughed, a deep, genuine laugh. That's your problem, Emily. You think being liked means letting people walk all over you. Emily opened her mouth, closed it, then shook her head in frustration. You know what? Forget it. She turned on her heel. Enjoy being the mean neighbor, Mike. Mike called after her. Enjoy using your own hose this summer, Emily. She stomped off, and Mike shut the door, smiling to himself. They were mad, but they had finally gotten the message. And just to be sure, he doubled down the next morning. He added a final touch, a motion-activated sprinkler system along the fence. If anyone tried to sneak in again, they'd get a nice cold wake-up call. But the best part? He didn't have to use it because nobody tried again. The freeloading days were over. After months of frustration, Mike had finally reclaimed his peace. The pool was his again, the backyard quiet, the entitlement gone. And the best part? He never even had to call the police, because that was never the goal. He wasn't trying to cause a scene or make enemies. He just wanted what was his to be respected. But here's the thing. Some people don't respect boundaries unless they're forced to. Mike had tried to be nice. He had given warnings. He had even asked politely, and they had ignored him at every turn. But the second he flipped the script, they backed off. Because at the end of the day, people will take as much as you let them. It doesn't matter if it's your time, your space, your energy, or even your damn swimming pool. If you don't set boundaries, someone will walk all over you. So was Mike petty for what he did? Maybe. But was he wrong? Not even a little. Because respect is earned, not given. And sometimes you have to fight for what's yours, even if it means getting a little creative. As for the neighbors, they learned a valuable lesson that summer. They learned that boundaries exist for a reason, and that respecting them is not optional. They learned that kindness is not weakness, and that sometimes the quietest people have the loudest roars. And Mike? Well, Mike learned that standing up for himself was not something to be afraid of. He learned that his sanctuary was worth fighting for, and that sometimes the best way to protect what's yours is to draw a line in the sand and dare anyone to cross it. So the next time you find yourself in a situation where people are taking advantage of you, remember Mike Tyson from Meadowgrove. Remember that it's okay to stand your ground, to set boundaries, and to fight for what's yours. Because at the end of the day, respect is earned, not given. And sometimes, the only way to earn it is to demand it. And if you ever find yourself in Meadowgrove, stop by Mike's place. You might just see him swimming laps in his pool, a content smile on his face, knowing that his sanctuary is finally, truly his own. Subscribe to the channel, share the video, and write in the comments what city you were from. In today's fast-paced world, it's crucial to set boundaries and stand up for what's rightfully yours. Mike Tyson's story in Meadowgrove teaches us that respect is earned, not given. People will often take advantage of your kindness if you let them, whether it's your time, space, or resources. It's essential to communicate your limits clearly and enforce them when necessary. Don't be afraid to be assertive. It's not about being mean, but about protecting your well-being and maintaining your peace. Remember, you don't have to tolerate disrespect or entitlement. Draw your line in the sand and demand the respect you deserve.
If you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe Undercover Insights channel.